What do you make of it, Spade? Yeah, it feels like I just walked into the middle of a Nighthawks painting. Nobody's talking, but everybody's saying something. Yeah, that's the thing. They don't even have their guns pulled. They just stand there like they already own the room. I don't know. If a couple of mugs like Charles McGraw and William Conrad told me to sit still, I might just stay put. No, nobody's running. That's what bothers me about this film. Like they already know how this ends. All right, we'll see how this one plays out. So let's start at the beginning. Hello to all the classic people who are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors and let you know that there will be spoilers ahead. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on The Killers 1946. This film is one of the greatest film noirs. I currently have this film as number 10 on my all film noirs list. You can check that out using the link below. IMDb.com has this movie rated at 7.7. On RottenTomatoes.com, this film has 100% on the tomato meter and 89% audience approval. I don't know what's wrong with those IMDb people. Crabby old New York Times film critic Bosley Carruthers said in an August 29, 1946 review, quote, "Back in the gangster-glutted 20s, Ernest Hemingway wrote a morbid tale about two gunmen waiting in a lunchroom for a man they were hired to kill. And while they relentlessly waited, the victim laid sweating in his room, knowing the gunmen were after him, but he was too weary and resigned to move. That's all the story told you, that a man was going to be killed." Further on, he said, quote, "With Robert Siodmak's restrained direction, a new actor, Burt Lancaster, gives a lanky, wistful imitation of a nice guy who's wooed to his ruin. And Ava Gardner is sultry and sardonic as the lady who crosses him up. Edmond O'Brien plays a shrewd investigator in the usual cool and clipped detective style. Sam Levine is very good as a policeman, and Albert Decker makes a thoroughly nasty thug." Unquote. This movie was nominated for 4 Oscars: Best Director, Best Writing, Screenplay, Best Film Editing, and Best Music Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedic Picture. However, The Killers 1946 lost in all of these categories to the great film The Best Years of Our Lives 1946, and there's a link below. Actors. This movie is a who's who of film noir. The great actor Burt Lancaster was in his first film role playing Ollie Swede Anderson. Lancaster was first covered in the prison film Birdman of Alcatraz 1962. One of my favorites, Edmond O'Brien, played insurance investigator Jim Reardon. O'Brien was first covered in the Birdman of Alcatraz 1962 also. Virginia Christine, Mrs. Folgers, was in the role of Lily Harmon Lubinsky. Christine was first covered in the campy horror film Billy the Kid vs. Dracula 1966. Great gravel-voiced actor Charles McGraw was Killer Al. McGraw was first covered in the very good film noir set mostly on a train, The Narrow Margin 1952. Beautiful and talented Ava Gardner was in the role of Femme Fatale Kitty Collins. Gardner was first covered in the military suspense movie 7 Days in May 1964. Big man and voice talent William Conrad played hitman Max. Conrad was first covered in the film noir Cry Danger 1951. Albert Decker was in the role of Big Jim Colfax. Decker was first covered in the film noir Illegal 1955. Jack Lambert played Dum Dum Clark. I guess the name says it all. Lambert was first covered in the film noir mystery The Unsuspected 1947 alongside Edward G. Robinson. Sam Levine was in the role of Police Lieutenant Lubinsky. Levine was born in the Russian Empire in 1905. At the age of 2, he moved with his family to New York City. After dropping out of high school, Levine worked as a garment cutter. In an attempt to become a better salesman, he auditioned for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and received a scholarship. Levine made his Broadway debut in 1927. He had his first credited role in film in 1936. He is notable for playing a cop in After the Thin Man 1936 and Shadow of the Thin Man 1941. However, it is his spate of film noir roles that really stand out. The films begin with today's film, The Killers 1946. Other films are Boomerang 1947, Brute Force 1947, Crossfire 1947, Dial 1119 1950, Slaughter on 10th Avenue 1957, and Sweet Smell of Success 1957. His final film was the courtroom drama and Justice for All 1979 with a young Al Pacino. Levine died in 1980 at the age of 75. Story: the credits roll as two professional torpedoes, Al, Charles McGraw, and Max, William Conrad, drive to the town of Brentwood, New Jersey. On foot, they first check the gas station and then cross the street to the diner. The two hitters waste no time corralling the owner, Harry Hayden, Sam the cook, Bill Walker, and customer, Nick Adams, Phil Brown, just by using their voices as no guns were shown. The two killers casually mention that they are there to kill Swede Lund, Burt Lancaster, or a friend of theirs. After Swede doesn't arrive by 6 p.m. as expected, the two gangsters leave the three hostages in the cafe and head to the boarding house where Swede is staying.
You wouldn't fool us, would you? He's not here.
Nick, who works with Swede at the gas station, rushes to the boarding house to warn Swede of the incoming attack. Swede lays on the bed with his face in a shadow. He shows no concern for his pending death. He tells Nick it's because he did something wrong once.
Why do they want to kill you? I did something wrong once.
Nick leaves before the two killers arrive and fill Swede with slugs. Later, Atlantic Casualty insurance investigator Jim Reardon, Edmond O'Brien, goes through Swede's belongings at the police station. Sam and Nick look through the mugshots, but to no avail. Reardon finds Swede's insurance policy, which has a payout amount of $2,500, which would be worth over $40,000 today. The policy lists Atlantic City resident Mary Ellen Queenie Dougherty, Queenie Smith, as the beneficiary. The policy was provided by the gas station that Swede worked for. Those were the days. Reardon also finds a green silk scarf with a harp and clovers as the design. Reardon interviews Nick, and we get our first flashback. At the morgue, Nick says Swede was a pleasant guy who only started to call in sick after an encounter with a customer driving a Cadillac. The driver was Colfax, Albert Decker. Colfax eyed Swede as if he were trying to confirm his identification. Pass coming back for you at a gas station was used in Out of the Past 1947. Reardon sees that Swede's body has signs of a broken right hand. Thinking that Swede may have been a fighter, he sends a picture into his office and asks Stella and Staunton to show the pictures around Kelly's boxing gym. Reardon visits a hotel in Atlantic City where the deeply religious Queenie works. Queenie doesn't remember Swede and has no idea why she would be made the beneficiary. When he shows her the picture, Queenie remembers the man as Anderson. In flashback, Queenie remembers that the room had been ransacked by Swede. He was distraught, saying, "She's gone, she's gone." Swede tries to kill himself by jumping out the window, but Queenie talks him down. He asks about the name Charleston, and the boss remembers him as a small-time thief. Stella has found out that the dead man was named Ollie Anderson and was a professional fighter from 1928 through 1935. In 1938, Ollie was sentenced to 3 years in prison for robbery. He was released early for good behavior. She also tells him that Philadelphia policeman Sam Lubinsky, Sam Levine, made the arrest of Swede. Reardon goes to see Sam at his apartment. Sam tells that his and Swede's fathers worked together on trains, and the two boys were childhood friends. Sam begins the story of Swede's last fight. For some reason, Swede won't throw his right hand. In the audience, Lily Harmon, Virginia Christine, sits on pins and needles as she watches Swede take a beating. Swede is on the mat when the final bell rings, meaning that the fight won't go down as a KO. Swede is taken to his dressing room where the doctor says his hand is broken, thus ending his fighting career. Back in my Golden Glove days, a friend of mine broke his thumb in a fight he should have won. He was so dazed we had to explain to him what happened about 45 times over the next 2 days before he finally remembered. That was way before concussion protocols. Jackie Robinson, Charles D. Brown, Swede's manager, and his trainer Joe Smalley, Gary Owen, leave the fighter alone with Sam as they begin a search for a new fighter. Sam delivers the news to Swede that he can no longer fight professionally. Swede comments about how many people come to see you when you win, but how you're alone when you lose. Swede sends Lily home, beginning their breakup. Sam is slightly crushed on Lily. Back in current time, Sam's wife comes out, and it's Lily. The couple hasn't seen Swede since her and Sam's wedding 9 years prior. Reardon asks about the breakup, and Lily begins the story in flashback. On her final date with Swede, he takes Lily to a hotel party hosted by Jake the Rake. She doesn't really want to be around these types of people, but Swede urges her inside. Blinky Franklin, Jeff Corey, is serving drinks. Jake introduces Kitty Collins, Ava Gardner, as the party's hostess. Swede is hit by lightning bolts when he sees Kitty. Kitty throws some real jabs at Lily about watching Swede being hurt while fighting, saying that she could never watch a man she cared about being hurt.
I hate brutality, Mr. Anderson. The idea...
Lily watches Swede while he watches Kitty sing. Blinky tells Lily that the apartment belongs to Big Jim Koufax, who is currently in jail. They pop back to current times before Sam goes into another flashback about some stolen jewelry. Kitty is at a table with Jake and some others, and she is wearing a horrible hat. She's also wearing a brooch that is apparently stolen. Sam talks to a pair of small-time criminals, Charlie, Wallace Scott, and Mrs. Bryson, Gabriel Windsor, about what they know. Sam asks about Kitty, and Charlie uses a match to signal Kitty to get rid of the hot brooch. Charlie says that Kitty was Koufax's girl, but she is now with Swede. Kitty dumps the brooch in some soup, but Sam has seen it all and goes to arrest Kitty. Swede comes in, and he has had a substantial increase in wealth based on his clothes. Sam says that Swede is in the numbers racket. Kitty begs Swede to help her. He tries to get Sam to let Kitty go as a favor, but Sam is a by-the-book cop. Swede confesses to stealing the jewelry before slugging Sam and running away. Back in current time, Sam says that the jewelry arrest is what led to Swede's 3-year prison sentence. They all leave for Swede's funeral. There are 3 other people in attendance, not including the priest. They are former manager Packy Robinson, former trainer Joe Smalley, and Charleston, Vince Barnett. Sam asks to be in on the pinch if Reardon finds the killer. Later, Reardon meets with Charleston. Charleston is drinking heavily and says that he really doesn't talk. Nevertheless, Charleston flashes back to when he and Swede were in a prison cell together for almost 2 years. Charleston gives a class on the planets and stars. I will discuss this further in the conclusions. We see that Swede is in possession of the green silk scarf. Swede asks Charleston to visit his girl Kitty when he gets out because he hasn't heard from her in a while and thinks she might be sick. Charleston replies that there are lots of other reasons why a girl doesn't write back besides being sick. Swede does not hear the truth.
Look her up. See if she's okay, will you?
Sure thing.
Maybe she's sick or something.
Charleston begins another flashback that is set a couple of days after Swede is released from prison. Koufax wanted Charleston to bring the Swede to a meeting. At the meeting are Koufax, Blinky, and Dum Dum Clark, Jack Lambert. Swede shows up at last. Sitting on the bed is Kitty, and Swede looks like he's been hit with a bat. Koufax is planning a $250,000 payroll heist. He says he has taken $100,000 and the others can divide what is left. Dum Dum thinks Blinky twitches too much because he has a monkey on his back, a drug habit. Koufax says he is clean. Charleston opts out, not wanting to get involved in such a large robbery at his age. Swede looks at Kitty and agrees to go on the robbery. Charleston advises Swede to stop listening to those golden harps. Charleston says he never saw Swede again after the meeting. Back at his office, Reardon asks Stella to find information on Kitty. He shows his boss some newspaper clippings about the $250,000 hat robbery. As the boss reads, the robbery is shown in flashback. Although it is not well shown, one of the men is said to be wearing a green silk scarf with harps on it. Reardon is sure that Swede and Kitty were involved in the robbery. The night of the robbery, Swede and an unidentified woman checked into a hotel room in Atlantic City. 2 days later, the woman leaves and Queenie has to stop Swede from killing himself. 6 years later, Swede is killed by 2 professional killers. The boss says again that this investigation is not worth the effort. Reardon gets a call from Sam saying Blinky has been shot and is near death. Blinky is babbling about Swede, Dum Dum, and Kitty so Sam wants Reardon to hear. Blinky's story flashes back to the night before the hat factory robbery. Colfax, Blinky, and Dum Dum are playing cards while Kitty flits about the room. Swede comes out from a nap in the back room. Colfax starts to hit Kitty, but Swede stands up for her. Swede is told to leave it alone as she is Colfax's girl. The men settle down at the card table and their anger is played out in the betting. Swede has 2 pairs and Colfax claims a full house. He reaches for the pot before showing his cards. Swede hits Colfax, accusing him of cheating. They almost draw guns. However, the robbery takes precedence over revenge. Swede is shown to be wrong as Colfax did have a full house. Blinky transitions from the flashback to current time, saying that Swede shouldn't have hit Colfax. The police find a newspaper article about Swede's murder and a bus ticket to Brentwood in Blinky's coat pocket. Blinky dies thinking about the getaway and the money they will have at the safe house. In another flashback, Blinky and Dum Dum arrive at a farm. Waiting at the farm are Colfax and a farmer, Charles Middleton. They all look at the money with the greed expected from people in their line of work. Swede silently climbs across the roof and enters the second floor through a window. He's armed with a revolver. He gets the jump on the 4 men below and takes all the robbery money. Dum Dum makes a move, but Swede beats him down. Swede says that the gang had a great idea of leaving him at the safe house while they split the money at the farm. Colfax says that the safe house burned down during the night, to which Swede says he should have been told. Colfax comes back with, "You were told. You're here." Swede shoots out the tires of the other cars before speeding away in his. The question Sam and Reardon have now is which gang member got to Swede first and had him murdered. Reardon heads to Swede's room in Brentwood to look for the answer. With the help of a landlady, he hides in an adjacent room. It is not long until Dum Dum arrives and rents the room. As soon as Dum Dum is inside, he begins tearing the room apart, presumably looking for the money from the robbery. Reardon gets the jump on Dum Dum and questions him about the robbery getaway. Reardon is pretty sure Dum Dum killed Blinky. Under questioning, Dum Dum says, just after midnight, Kitty delivered the message that the safe house location was changed. He says that when Swede robbed them, he claimed he was not informed. Dum Dum says neither he nor Blinky would have killed the one guy who knew where the money was located. Dum Dum then gets the jump on Reardon. Now on the bottom, Reardon tells him that Swede and a woman took the money to Atlantic City, and later the woman skipped out on Swede, taking the money along. Dum Dum gives Reardon a couple of hard kicks in the head before escaping onto the roof. Cops are outside and fire at Dum Dum, but he still manages to get away. Sam meets up with Reardon on a train heading to Pittsburgh. He says that Colfax is there and they are going to pay him a visit. He also mentions that Dum Dum is wounded because they found blood on the roof. Sam says that Colfax has gone straight and is a contractor. Yeah, contracting, that's where you find all the honest guys at. Reardon receives a telegram saying that the safe house burned after 2 a.m. Reardon goes to see Colfax at his plant. Colfax at first denies any knowledge of the robbery. He later asks about Kitty and says that's who he wants to know about. Reardon tells Colfax that Kitty is the one who pulled the double cross. He bluffs that a chambermaid from the hotel can ID Kitty. Colfax says he hates double-crossing dames. Ha! Who really likes double-crossing dames? Colfax gets a call from Jake the Rake asking about Kitty. Reardon says to Colfax that he has put out the word that he wants to talk to her, or if not, he will turn everything over to the police. Sam and Reardon wait in their hotel room, and eventually Kitty calls. She wants to meet at the Green Cat. Of course she does. She's Kitty. Reardon says that they can meet outside the Adelphia Theater. Reardon says he will send a man, but he actually goes himself. There is a small man leaning against the wall. He is holding a cane and smoking a cigarette. Kitty arrives wearing a stylish lady's fedora. They get in a cab and head straight out. The small man follows in another cab. Killers Al and Max arrive outside the theater, but appear to be too late. Kitty says Jake the Rake called her and she flew into town. Reardon has a taxi drive to the Green Cat. The little man arrives at the club shortly after. Kitty orders milk. Of course she does. She's Kitty. Inside the club, the little man goes upstairs. Reardon says between Blinky's deathbed confession and the imaginary chambermaid at the hotel, the police would have enough to convict Kitty. She says she will do anything to stay out of trouble, including giving back $70,000. She says she has a home and a husband now that she wants to protect. Reardon says he wants Colfax as a fall guy. She says she won't rat, but when Reardon gets up to leave, Kitty says she will tell the details.
Even the old Kitty Collins never...
Under questioning, she says Colfax planned the robbery. When asked if Swede was in love with her, Kitty says he was always looking at her and he carried a scarf she gave him. Reardon pulls the scarf out of his pocket. Kitty is shaken and switches over to being the victim, saying that she hated her life and wanted out. In flashback, Kitty goes to Swede's apartment just before 2 a.m. She tells a tale that the others were going to rip him off of his share of the loot. She says it was Colfax's idea, but Blinky and Dum Dum went along. She plays Swede like a cheap violin. Back in current time, she says that she knew Swede would get the money and that she could get it from him later in Atlantic City. Kitty sees a small man at the bar and excuses herself to the restroom. The music is frenetic as Al and Max enter the club. Unseen until now, Sam is also in the bar. When Al and Max make the move to gun down Reardon, the investigator flips the table over. He flipped the table over to protect his family. Sounds like a song. Sam opens up from the side, hitting first Max and then Al. Reardon runs to the restroom only to find that Kitty has escaped out the window. Reardon, Sam, and some local cops rush to Colfax's mansion. When they enter, they hear gunfire. Dum Dum falls to the bottom of the stairway, dead. Reardon finds Colfax buzzed up the stairs, wounded and dying. Reardon explains that Kitty delivered the message about the safe house change hours before the original safe house burned. From this, Reardon knew that Kitty had a partner and it could only be Colfax. Kitty is escorted in by a policeman after being caught outside. Reardon says he knows that Colfax and Kitty were married. Sam asks why Colfax sent the killers after Swede. The dying man says that if anyone discovered Swede, they would know that he and her were the double-crossers. If he left Swede alive, Swede would begin to question why. Kitty switches to pure self-service, begging her dying husband to give her an alibi, with no concern for the man whatsoever. Sam says, "Don't ask a dying man to lie his soul into hell." Conclusion. This film is based on a 1927 short story written by Ernest Hemingway. However, Hemingway's story only covered the first part of the film where the murder took place. Writer Anthony Wheeler didn't receive on-screen credit, so they could splash Ernest Hemingway as the author on the screen. Also, Richard Brooks and John Huston were uncredited screenwriters. Hemingway may have based his short story on a mob hit of boxer Andre Anderson. Anderson was shot in a Chicago speakeasy in March 1926. Earlier, he had fought future heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey to a draw in 1916. Burt Lancaster was amazing in this film, especially since this was his film debut. I've said many times that the best film noirs are told in flashback. This movie had 11 flashbacks that tell Swede's story, always with Swede as a background character. These flashbacks are when Colfax treats Swede rudely at the gas station, when Swede almost takes his life after Kitty robs and abandons him, when Swede is pummeled in the boxing ring, and the aftermath when Kitty hooks Swede like a rainbow trout at the party, when Swede takes a rap for Kitty at the restaurant, when Charleston teaches Swede about the planets, when the others are planning the heist and Swede is the last one to arrive, when Swede sleeps before the robbery, being the only relaxed one, when Swede is not a major player at the Hat Factory robbery, when Swede is the last to arrive at the hideout after the robbery, and when Kitty makes Swede think the others are betraying him before the robbery. In one of the best examples of allegorical storytelling I've seen, while in jail, Charleston explains to Swede about the stars and the planets. He points out the constellation Orion and pronounces its name quite oddly before calling it the Great Bear.
That up there's the constellation of Orion. Brightest star in all the heavens.
Of course, Orion is the hunter and the Big Dipper is the Great Bear. He also says that Betelgeuse in Orion is the brightest star in the sky. Don't say that 3 times. In fact, Sirius, aka the dog star, is the brightest star, and now we know why Sirius Radio has a dog logo with a star in its eye. I'll give an important point about these mistakes after I go over the 9 planets. Since 2006, Pluto is no longer listed as a planet. When this movie was made, there were 9 planets. There are 9 characters who narrate flashbacks around Swede. They are Nick Adams at the garage, Mary Ellen Queenie Dougherty at the hotel, Sam Lubinsky at the boxing match, Lily Harmon Lubinsky at the Colfax party, Sam Lubinsky once more with the stolen jewelry at the restaurant, Charleston at the jail and during the recruiting for the heist, Swede during the robbery, Blinky Franklin before and after the robbery, and Kitty tricking Swede the night before the robbery. So it would seem like Swede is the sun and all the planets revolve around him. But looking at the ending of Swede and the mistakes in Charleston's descriptions of the stars and planets, Swede had the illusion of being the sun, while really he was an exoplanet just like Pluto. Finally, to the Femme Fatale. On my great Femme Fatales list, I currently have Kitty Collins, Ava Gardner, slotted at number 14. I think she holds this lower position because she is smooth and doesn't seem malicious in most of this movie. Unlike Vera in Detour 1945, for example. You never see the narcissistic behavior of Kitty until the end when she is begging the dying Colfax to give her an alibi with total disregard for the dying man. World famous short summary: a pretty face don't mean no pretty heart. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you want more, be sure to subscribe, hit the like, and ring the bell. Beware the Moors. Alright, some boxes are going to pop up. One is a playlist, another is a video recommendation.